Hi, I want to show you how to use the MacroRecorder in Excel. This is a spreadsheet feature that generates program code in a language called VBA, or Visual Basic for Applications. And it's used to record instructions to perform a routine task. So if there's something that I do periodically, on a routine basis, then rather than having to set up the spreadsheet manually, make menu selections and adjust columns and apply formatting on a routine basis, rather than having to do all that manually, what I can do is turn on a recorder, perform the task, let it record everything that I do, and then shut off the recorder, and it will store the instructions that the computer needs to follow to perform a task like that. And then in the future, I can provide new data, and it will automatically adjust the formatting of the data or manipulate the data in some routine fashion. So let me show you how this works with a concrete example. First of all, I need to tell you a little bit about where to find the MacroRecorder and how to find the MacroRecorder. I'm showing a developer page, and you'll notice that on this developer page there is a record macro button, okay? And that's what I'm going to do prior to providing the manual instructions to format this data. But that developer page is not automatically displayed when you install Excel. Okay, so by default you're not going to find the developer page, the developer tab, the developer page. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to the File pull-down menu, and on the menu bar to the left, choose Options. You'll get a dialog box with another menu bar from which you would choose Customize Ribbon. And when you make that selection, you have a series of check boxes over here on the right, and among those check boxes is one that's labeled Developer, and you need to check that, make sure it's checked. So check it, and then click OK, and at that point you should see a developer tab. Click on it and you'll see the same page that I have right here, and you'll have access to the MacroRecorder. Alright, so I'm going to do a number of formatting operations on this data, and I want all that recorded so that in the future, if I want to take a new set of data and do the same thing with it, I don't have to manually provide those inputs. I can just provide the data, call up the macro, and the spreadsheet program will follow those previously recorded instructions and format the new set of data exactly the way I do it here. So to get started, I'm going to take my set of data and turn on the MacroRecorder. So I choose the Record Macro button. It wants a name immediately because it's going to store these instructions away, and I'll have to call it up eventually. So I'm going to call this Macro 1, and I'll just append to this Format Utility Report. Okay. Notice I'm using what's called camel case notation, elevating the first character in that what appears to be a string of words, elevating each character to uppercase to make it more readable. And what I want to avoid is creating a name with any embedded spaces. So again, that's quite readable the way it's written, and it does not contain any spaces. You have an option here to assign a shortcut key, and I think on the certification exam you have to do that, but I'll do it. It's not anything that I would necessarily do if I were writing macros for some sort of production purpose. There's an alternative way of finding the macros, of selecting the macros, but again, I show you this feature because it exists and because you may have to know how to do it on the certification exam. Okay, so I'm going to call this Control F, okay, and I'm going to make that actually lowercase f. I'm not sure whether it's case sensitive or not. I think it is not, but I won't take any chances. And I want to caution you about this. There are certain shortcut keystrokes that you probably use routinely. I know myself, I use Control-C to copy, Control-X to cut, Control-V to paste. And if you name a macro by any shortcut that already exists in Microsoft Windows, the macro will override the Windows shortcut keys while you're in the spreadsheet program. So you want to be careful. Okay, so if I named this Control-C, for instance, then I would disable the Windows feature that allows me to copy with a shortcut keystroke of Control-C. So the macros have precedent over whatever would normally be available. When you create a macro, you have the option of saving it in just the worksheet in which you're going to use it, or you can put it in a file and it can be made available to any worksheet that you use at any time in the future. So I'm going to limit the scope of this and make it just for this workbook, and I think that's what they're going to have you do in the certification exam. But I want you to be aware that we could broaden the scope if we wanted to, and if you find that to be useful at some point in the future, you can Google for how you do it. It's going to be just a simple change that you have to make. The other thing that I have in this dialog box is a place to insert a comment or a description, and I'm just going to say recorded formatting operations for property report. For property reports. Okay, so you want to try to provide something that is useful in case anybody wants to look at this macro and say, what's this thing doing? So you want to be as succinct as possible, but nevertheless, that's a good feature to use so that either you can remind yourself 6 months from now what it is, or somebody else that inherits the spreadsheet program can figure out what the macro does. Okay, so at that point I'm going to say OK, and the recorder is on. So when I'm all done, then I've got an option to stop recording. Now when you turn the recorder on, there's no need to get nervous about things because it's recording your keystrokes, and if you do something wrong, if you go back and correct it, then the computer is going to capture all those, the program is going to capture all those instructions, and in the future when it attempts to automatically perform these tasks for you in the course of doing things, it will do things wrong and then back up and do things right again. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So as I look at this data, what kind of things might I want to do? I might want to expand these columns a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to drag this out just a little bit, and maybe on these columns I will set them to an optimal width. Okay, so if I go to the home page and choose Format Auto Fit Column Width, then it'll set them to a width that is wide enough to accommodate the data, but no wider than it needs to be. And then another feature that I might want to apply would be to take my actual recorded data for each one of these expenses and maybe change the font color to blue, and change the column headings to bold. And since they're column headings, maybe I want to change their color just a little bit. Okay. And I'll change, that was not what I intended to do, so I've made my first mistake. I'm simply going to undo it, and instead of changing the font color, I want to change the fill color, and I'll change the fill color to whatever color that is, blue-gray. And I might want all of these to be bolded, and I might want these to be the same color as my font, so I make those, I think I'll make them this color. That appears to be the same color, I think, except bolded. And then maybe italicize the identifiers over here. And I will change the title so that it's centered across all the columns, so I use the merge and center feature. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to change this and make it 16 point and bold, and then merge and center it across all these columns. Okay, so I've provided a sufficient amount of formatting here, and I think what I'll do is make sure that I've got the correct functions in here. So I'm going to clear this out by choosing the clear button. I'll clear contents, and by choosing clear contents, it'll continue to keep the same bold enhancement and font color and everything. So here I want to find the total, so it's going to be an equal sum function, and I will find the sum of this range, and then drag by the fill handle, perform a relative copy here, and then I'll find the average function, use the average function here to find the average, and again, same range, and I will drag right. Okay, so now I have my functions in place. And the other thing I want to do is find out how much, let's say how much the gas differs from the average, how much the individual gas prices differ from the average. I want to see who's wasting gas and who's conserving. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight the range of cells that I want to apply a conditional formatting rule to. And let's see, I have an option for, I'm going to try a top rule, okay? I'm going to find out by using this top rule. Now I could write my own function, but this one already exists, so it's easy to implement. So from the menu, I'll choose above average, and it wants to know how I want to highlight these. So it's suggesting a selected range with light red fill and dark red text. That looks fine to me. That should accentuate things. And now as I look at that column, I see that the first three properties are using more than the average amount of gas, and the bottom three properties are using less gas than average. So I've applied some conditional formatting there, and maybe just for the sake of review than anything, For the electrical expense, I want to apply conditional formatting and apply data bars. So I'll choose some style of data bar, and then I can see how much each of these individual values, how they compare with the other values in the range. So I can see how the magnitude of the number compares with the magnitude of other numbers in the range. All right, so you've seen conditional formatting applied before, and we'll stop there. So at this point, I think I have applied all the features that I want. So I'm going to go to the Developer tab, click Stop Recording, and all the instructions that were necessary to perform that task have been recorded and stored away. So next thing I'm going to do is create this report. I've got a report template, okay? So I've got a place for the title, and in the report template I also have the functions inserted where they belong. So I'm going to copy everything here, do a Control-C. We're going to pretend that it's January now. So Control-V, and actually let's pretend it's January. Okay, and in January we're going to pretend that gas for property 1 was $355.99, and on the next property $345.99, and 212, and $109. It just occurred to me I should have put currency formatting on that data. I forgot to do that, so I won't have this in currency format. That's too bad. Then $367 here and 88 cents. And I'll just make up a bunch of numbers. So $534. Looks like a especially cold month here. The electricity, $321.66, and $213.99, and $324.15, and $432, and $543.22, and $444, and then water, $234, and we'll pretend that they all used the same amount of water, and their cable bill was the same amount as well. So I fill all that down, and at this point I have my January data, and I'm going to highlight all of the data that I want to apply the formatting to. Go to the Developer tab, and under Macro I can choose from the list any macro that I've previously recorded, execute the Run button, and it transforms everything with all the formatting characteristics that I had shown previously. So the data looks very, very similar here. Okay. Now I notice that the column widths are a little bit different. Okay. I didn't make any changes to the column widths here. I should have probably changed the column widths, and then I could have been guaranteed that the column widths for all my reports in the future would have been the same. So I should have changed the column lists when I recorded the macro. I should have also included currency format. So there's a quick example of how to use the macro recorder.